Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Mitchel Resnick.
It's great to be here. Thanks everybody for coming. So I'll talk a little bit and then really look forward to the discussions and questions you have afterwards. I was going to start with the story that goes back almost 20 years, because the year was 1999, right as we were on the cusp of starting the new century, the new millennium. At the time, lots of people were starting to think about, looking back at the last 1,000 years, so what the greatest accomplishments of the last 1,000 years, and some of the dreams and hopes for the coming millennium. And I was at one conference where I was on a panel where we were asked the following question. So what was the most important invention of the last 1,000 years? And other panelists said things like the printing press, obviously an incredibly important invention that changed the way people spread ideas over space and time. Other people talked about the steam engine, sort of launched the industrial era. Some people talk about the computer, invented right towards the end of the millennium, but clearly a really important invention that's a huge impact looking ahead. As I thought of those, clearly those are important inventions, but I had a different response. And for me, the most important invention of the last 1,000 years was kindergarten. And some people are surprised at that, because a lot of people don't think of kindergarten as an invention at all, let alone an important invention. But in fact, kindergarten is an invention. In fact, it was invented about 200 years ago. The first kindergarten started in the 1830s in Germany by Friedrich Froebel. And Froebel was not just making a school for younger kids. He was rethinking what schools and learning should be about. And one thing I really liked about Froebel was he was not just an educator, he was a designer. He thought that really to bring a new approach to education and learning, he needed to sort of be designing new tools. So he sort of came up with what he ended up calling Froebel's gifts. And it was the set of things, it represented his approach. Because until that time, most education had just been about someone standing in front of a classroom, lecturing, people writing down. And Froebel knew that for his kindergarten, for younger kids, he needed a much more interactive approach. So he developed all these different materials for kids to build and create and experiment with, whether it was blocks or different type of beads, the equipment sticks to make three-dimensional structures, or mosaic tiles for making different types of patterns. And he saw this as a way of children learning through designing and creating things. And as I sort of thought about this, it seemed to me that the ideas that Froebel started 200 years ago were not just important for kindergarten, but especially today are important for learners of all ages. And of course, Froebel couldn't have imagined this when he was, inventing kindergarten 200 years ago. But I think he's inventing an approach to learning that's ideally suited for our time now in the 21st century. Because we live in a time where more than ever before, things are changing rapidly. We're in an era where there's constant change. The children growing up today are going to be confronted with a never-ending stream of new and unexpected and uncertain situations. So because we live in such changing and uncertain times, there's nothing more important than the ability to think and act creatively. And I think that Froebel's kindergarten set a model for how we can help people learn to think and act creatively, exactly what's needed in today's society. But as you think about a traditional kindergarten, in Froebel's kindergarten, it was really focused on kids designing and creating things in collaboration with one another. Whether it was using blocks to build towers and castles, using crayons to make pictures. Kids were always creating things in collaboration with one another in Froebel's kindergarten and many that followed. But unfortunately, too often after kindergarten, the approach to education really changes. Instead of this type of image, what too often happens is kids are sitting in desks, filling out worksheets, listening to lectures, and it's following a model of education that's about delivery of information or delivery of instruction. So too often, this is not a good model for developing as a creative thinker and a creative learner. So I think this approach to education is really holding back kids developing the capacities they need to thrive in today's society where creative thinking is more important than ever before. And what's even worse is, if you go to many kindergartens today, this approach to education is seeping down into kindergarten. You see a lot of kindergarten today where kids are filling out math worksheets and drilling on phonics flashcards. So kindergarten is becoming more like the rest of school. And what I want to talk about today, and what I argue in my book, is we need to do exactly the opposite. We want to make the rest of school, the rest of life, more like kindergarten. And so as I thought about that, I think, well, how is it that we can take that kindergarten approach and bring it to learners of all ages, and support it for learners of all ages? So when I've thought about what characterizes this kindergarten approach to learning that really helps people develop as creative thinkers, I've ended up focusing on 4 ideas, 4 guiding principles that all begin with the letter P: projects, passion, peers, and play. So I think that in that kindergarten approach, it's about kids working on projects based on their passions, in collaboration with peers, and a playful spirit. So you see this in the kindergarten where kids will come in and they'll imagine sort of a fantasy city. And they don't just imagine, they start creating it. They come with a project of taking out the blocks and starting building some type of castle for it. And so they start working on things they really care about. They might get together, kids will start making stories around it. So they'll start working together. Somebody might make a road in front of the castle, and somebody will be doing a puppet show behind the castle. So they work together with one another in a playful spirit. And in doing so, I think they're developing as creative thinkers. They're learning how to start with the germ of an idea and start to create something, experiment with it, iterate on it, refine it, and continue to build on their imagination. And that's exactly what we need for dealing with the type of challenges that we face today for learners of all ages. So what I've been trying to do is say, how can we take this kindergarten approach of projects, passion, peers, and play, and bring it to learners of all ages? So in one of the ways I've done that over the last actually like 30 years now, I've had this collaboration with the Lego toy company. And again, if we really think that kids learn a lot by designing, creating, building things, then Lego's a pretty natural partner. And we've worked with Lego to take not just the building blocks where you can build structures, but then adding computation so you can build things that move and interact and communicate and react to one another. In many ways, the work we're doing with Lego, I see it as building modern day versions of those Freudian gifts. So Freudian took the materials of his time and made materials to let kids become creators with them. And I'd like to think that if Freudian were alive today, he might be designing some of the type of things that we're doing with the Lego company, of trying to use today's technology to allow kids to design, create, experiment, and explore. To give a sense of it, I'm going to show a video. Actually, it's a pretty old video. It's from when we first started working on these programmable bricks with the Lego company. But even though the video is old, I still like showing the video because I think it captures the spirit of what we're looking for when we try to take this 4P approach to education. So this is a video from a group of kids here in Boston. They were involved in one of our projects. It's called the Computer Clubhouse, a project that we started for young people in low-income communities where they come together to learn to use new technologies in creative ways. So we've used the Clubhouse as a place where we both learn from what kids are doing and then we try out new technologies. So this is from a summer workshop with a group of the Clubhouse kids where we provide them with some prototypes of these early programmable bricks, and we try to engage them in creating things that would be useful to them in their everyday lives. And at the end of this 2-week workshop, a local TV crew came, and so this video is from what the TV crew did, showing some of the projects that the kids worked on.
Christina Costa is trying to build a better mousetrap. Make that gerbil trap.
Every time they want to go inside this gerbil house, they press this light sensor.
It's one of the many inventions created at this free math and science camp run by the Computer Museum and the Girl Scouts, where girls from Boston are devising everything from an odometer for rollerblades to a diary security system.
When someone touches this to try to open the diary, it'll take a picture of that person.
So like if your creepy little brother tries to read your diary,
Yeah.
he's on camera.
Yes.
I think one reason I still really like this video so much after all these years is even just from the short snapshots of the projects, you can really get a sense that the girls were working on something that was based on their passions. The first girl was not just building a house for any old gerbil, she was building a house for her gerbil. So she really cared about it. So she wanted to make a nice automatic door for her gerbil. And then she even went further, that she started, once it was connected to the computer, she kept track of every time the door opened or shut because she wanted to collect data about what her gerbil was doing while she was asleep at night, or while the girl was asleep at night, or when she was off at school. And then, if she had been just asked, do you want to do a data analysis, activity, she would not have been interested. But she cared about this because she wanted to know things about her gerbil. For somebody, the girl with the rollerblade, she loved rollerblading; it was her favorite thing, and she really wanted to know how fast she was going on her rollerblades. And there was this sensor that you could put on the wheel of the rollerblade that gave revolutions per second. But she wanted to figure out how fast she was going in miles per hour because that's what she was familiar with. So she spent a lot of time figuring out how to do that conversion. And again, in school classrooms, they had tried to teach things about unit conversion. She hadn't paid attention because she thought, what's the use? But now she wanted to do it, so she worked hard at doing it. So we see over and over, the kids are willing to work longer and harder and persist in the face of challenges when they work on projects that they really care about based on their passions. With this experience, obviously we were supporting kids creating things in the physical world. Let me also point out how this is different than a lot of, today you go into a toy store, you see all these incredible computerized toys, and they're incredibly sophisticated. You walk up to a pet dinosaur and you talk to it and it starts dancing, and you shake its hand and it starts singing. And it's amazing technology. But when I look at it, I often feel that, well, I'm sure the toy designer who made it learned a lot. I'm less clear that the kids are learning a lot when they just interact with it. So we want to make sure that the technology is not just there to do some, sophisticated, action, but rather that the kids are the ones who are doing the designing, creating, and building. And we want to make sure that same approach goes over not just in the physical world, but in the online world. Because kids these days, as well as adults, spend a lot of time, not just in the physical world, but online world, virtual worlds. And we want to make sure that they're not just pointing, clicking, browsing, chatting, playing games, but designing, creating the way that these girls were in the workshop. So that's what led us to develop the Scratch programming language. In fact, history, we were inspired to do Scratch by our work at these clubhouses. We saw these kids, they wanted to create their own games and animations and interactive stories, but there weren't good tools for them to do it. So we saw there was a need, and we always want to go with things that kids want to do. So kids want to create their own interactive stories and games, and we want to make a tool that made it possible for them to do it. So for those who haven't seen Scratch, look, I see that there are people who have, but if you haven't seen it, so with Scratch, you end up, this video should be playing. Okay, so to create programs in Scratch, you snap together the graphical building blocks, somewhat like Lego blocks, but each of these stacks controls the behavior of one of the characters. So again, similar to a Lego-like way, you describe what you want each of your characters to do. And then importantly, you can then click share and share your creation in an online community. We launched Scratch in 2007, and we launched the online community at the same time as the programming language. It was the first, no programming language ever came with an online community before. This is the third P, peers. We knew that if kids were going to get engaged in creating these projects, they wanted to be part of a community. So right from the beginning, we provided a way for kids to share their projects, and that provided both an audience for them, so they could put things online, other people could try out their projects, give them feedback and encouragement and suggestions. And also, kids could get inspiration by looking at what others had developed. And if you look on the Scratch website, you see this incredible diversity of projects. So that's one thing that really makes us happy, because when we look at these projects, we see that kids really are following their own passions and interests. Because you see everything from animated stories to interactive birthday cards to animate comic strips to recreate virtual versions of Lego building systems to recreations of classic video games, Donkey Kong, dress-up doll games, tutorials, interactive artwork, science simulations. And we've just seen this wide range of things, used both in school and outside of school. So like this last one was a project from India. And this was one that was done in school. The teacher later told us about it, that they were studying the layers of the earth. And one of the kids for his project, he gives a guided tour. He uses Scratch to make a guided tour of the Earth. And you see, he puts in, let's see if it's having some trouble with it. Try again. There. So again, he did a voiceover in his native language of Kannada, and he's explaining what's going on in different parts of the Earth as you go down. So he was sharing what he had learned and what he was excited about. The teacher explained he was especially excited to learn that things are moving inside the Earth. So it's great to have this interactive tool where you can make things move, because he's talking about what's happening as you go down. And even like as you reach the water table, you hear a splashing sound. So he puts in sound effects to explain what it is that's going on. And from the beginning, right from the beginning, as we launched Scratch, we also made it available in lots of languages. It's available in more than 50 languages now. So if you go to the editor with the building blocks that you saw before, you can just choose what language you want them in. It's also been great. This is one of the wonders of the internet and open source approaches, that we just put together a list of 1,000 or so words and phrases in Scratch. We made it available online, and then volunteer translators around the world have translated it to 50 languages. So if someone in India does a project, and his native language is Kannada, and he could post it in the online community, and a child in Boston could then change the blocks to English and read his program, make changes to the program, remix it, put it online, and a child in Tokyo could look at it in Japanese. So it's a way for kids to be sharing these ideas with one another. We've been excited about the way that Scratch has grown. So you can see it's just been growing. So it's launched in 2007. And especially in the last few years, it's been growing like crazy. I mean, partly we came with a new version of Scratch in 2013. When it started, it was a downloadable application that you ran locally. And then you had to share things in the community and then download things. There's a lot of back and forth. So we embedded it all within the browser in 2013. And it really started to take off. Also, obviously, there's broader changes in the culture of a growing interest in coding and interest in learning to code. So in some ways, we've both contributed to that and are riding the wave of that as it keeps growing. So of course, it's nice that there's more and more kids using Scratch. Last year, more than 8 million new people registered on the Scratch website. There's now more than 20 million kids who are registered on the site. Every day, there's about 25,000 new kids who join as members of the community. There's about 35,000 new projects that are shared on the website every day. And we're happy about the numbers, but even more we're happy about the way that we see it making a difference in kids' lives, and what when we could sort of follow the trajectories of individual kids to see what they're learning and how they're learning to express themselves creatively. I think our ultimate goal is always keeping the focus on how can we help kids learn to think creatively and express themselves creatively. So let me tell you a story about one member of the Scratch community. It's a community member with the username Ipsy. And Ipsy explained that they love to draw. They would, from an early age, would always go home and fill up notebooks with all types of drawings. And at one point, when Ipsy was around 12 years old, a friend told Ipsy about Scratch and said, you can make your drawings come alive with Scratch. And that was intriguing to Ipsy. So this is one of the first projects that Ipsy did in Scratch. And I like this because Ipsy took one of, it's only the second time, it takes the second time to run out of what it is. So Ipsy took one of their drawings and just added a little bit of animation. And I think I like this because I think a lot of learning happens that way. You start with something you're familiar with and comfortable, and you're dipping. You almost can see Ipsy, dipping their toe in the water to try something new. So there's the script just to make the eyes, animated, the ears animated. And Ipsy was really excited, to see their, project come alive. I'm going to try to just advance it from the computer and see if that works any better. So after a little while, Ipsy continued to make different projects. A project that really got Ipsy well known in the community was this project called Lemonade Time. And this is a game where you control the movement of the otter. And the challenge is to make lemonade. You have to gather all the ingredients, lemons and sugar and water. So you move the otter and you get tipped. You can ask different characters they meet. for advice about how to get the sugar in the lemonade. Anyway, so it goes on into this, sort of adventure game world that IPSI created. And this became really popular in the community. If you go to the project page for Lemonade Time, you can see that it was viewed 17,000 times. It was loved almost 2,000 times. It was remixed 88 times, again, which means that someone sort of went inside, looked at the code, and either made changes to the code or changed the characters, and then saved it as their own project, their own version of it. So it was remixed 88 times. There was more than 1,800 comments with people giving suggestions and encouragement to IPSI. And you can tell that IPSI was listening and reading the comments. But if you look at the instructions here, it says, edit. Due to popular demand, the otter walks a little faster now. So like any good designer, IPSI is paying attention to the users, but what the users are asking about. And IPSI continued to work on this wide range of different types of projects. Again, it caught our attention, again, because of the diversity of projects that IPSI worked on. So a lot of other kids in the community really liked IPSI's artwork. So IPSI started creating projects that were just collections of artwork to share with the community. So here's one of them. Even branded, that's IPSI's studio. So you can go through and see different things. And then IPSI wrote in the instructions, you can edit these as much as you want, but you must credit me if you use any of these sprites. And again, this is IPSI learning to be a good member of an online community. Learning the importance of sharing. And in fact, this was something that IPSI learned. IPSI grew up in Southern California, but we reached out and talked to IPSI. And IPSI explained that at first, they were really resistant and resented it when people were making remixes, because it was like someone was stealing their artwork. But over time, IPSI realized that when everybody shares, everybody benefits. So you should be a really good community member. Everything that you share in the Scratch community is covered by Creative Commons, so other people are allowed to remix it. And that's not always a hard lesson for some kids to learn, but we try to help them understand that everyone's going to benefit if it is that way. So it's important to give credit. In fact, that's one of the part of the guiding principles of the community. The community guidelines is that you have to give credit if you remix things, and IPSI is now saying you should give credit, but saying edit as much as you want, because that's part of the rules with a Creative Commons license. Now, in addition to sharing artwork, IPSI was also sharing the programming tricks that they were learning. So like here's a project in that, sorry. I did that too quickly. Okay, there. So you might, in the Lemonade Time, you might have noticed there was a scrolling background. It's not so easy to make scrolling backgrounds in Scratch, but a lot of kids want to make scrolling backgrounds. So IPSI made this basic scrolling game tutorial explaining how to do it. And then even you can see having the code, well-commented code for other people to make their own scrolling backgrounds. So I think if you look at this, you really can see IPSI following those 4 Ps. Well, the whole Scratch website is based on projects, which is a real difference. It might seem obvious. Well, of course, it's good to work on projects. But look at most ways that kids learn to code these days. They go to a site where they're given a puzzle to solve. And again, there's nothing wrong with learning to solve a puzzle, but that's very different than learning to work on projects. For us, if you're really going to become fluid with the technology, it's not just, you can learn concepts well by solving a puzzle, but if you want to learn to express yourself, just solving a puzzle is not enough. A project is a way to express yourself. And the whole Scratch site is based around kids making projects, sharing projects, as IPSI was doing. IPSI clearly, following their passion for drawing and other things that are important. We see that over and over in the community. With peers, sharing with the community, sharing tutorials with the community, taking feedback from the community, taking suggestions from the community. And then play, you can see in IPSI's work a sort of a playful approach of constantly refining and trying new things and experimenting. So when we see play, it's not just a matter of having fun or making games. When we say play, we think of it as this sort of an approach to your work where you're constantly experimenting, taking risks, trying new things. And we think that type of playful spirit is critical to develop as a creative thinker. So we're trying to continue to support more and more kids to have the type of experiences that we saw IPSY having. Now, of course, as we're developing Scratch, we need to continue to enhance Scratch. Technology keeps on changing, so we have to keep on developing Scratch to open new opportunities. Kids are always wanting to do things. They're connected to the things they see in the world around them. So right now, in our group, we're working on the next generation of Scratch called Scratch 3.0. I mentioned we did the second generation in 2013 where we embedded the browser. So we're working on a third generation that will launch this summer. Part of it is to make it much more mobile friendly. Right now, unfortunately, Scratch, when we designed the current version, mobile wasn't as central, so it does not deal with mobile very well. So the new version will be much more mobile friendly. But also, we're just as important, we're trying to make Scratch not just a standalone community, but a tool that everybody can connect to, make more of a hub that will connect to all different types of physical things in the world, to online services. Like, for example, one thing with Scratch 3.0, we're working with Google so it can link to certain web services that Google offers for doing things like speech recognition and speech synthesis. So we have new blocks where you can sort of, have your computer speak, but also have your program listen. So let's see if this is working. So there's a program where it should work. It is just a simulation of it. This is not the real version running. But it should work like it says, when I hear, what time is it? It should say, if I say, what time is it? It should say, and it's not working.
Party time.
Okay. Yeah. So it should say it's party time, and then we'll go do the dance. So again, kids are familiar these days. They're surrounded by devices that listen. But we don't want kids to grow up in a world that's just magical around them and mystical. So we want kids to be able to make projects that listen. So with this, kids can make their own projects that listen in different ways. We also want to let kids connect their projects to the physical world. This is just a video of an example from a little while ago, but this is what we're emphasizing more in Scratch 3.0. This connecting Scratch to a sensor board that there. And this is sent towards a light sensor. And what happens is, it can detect when the little hole in the wood goes above the light sensor, it can detect that. So as you move the physical saw back and forth, it's then synchronizing the saw in the program. So we really want to make it easy for kids to be able to connect to things in the world, get information from sensors, and also to control things in the world. So we're like working with Philips Hue technology to control lights around you, to control motors. We're working with the Lego company to integrate Scratch with various Lego robotics. But it's not just what we're going to do. We're going to release this as an API to make it easy for other people to build their own Scratch blocks. So with Scratch 3.0, there'll be a core set of blocks that we'll provide, and then we'll tell developers how they can add Scratch blocks as extensions, what we call extensions, so that they can add new capabilities. I'll show one more example of one of these extensions. Again, this is just in prototype form. Okay, so this is a project that's done in collaboration with Spotify, the music service. So what is this? You can start this Scratch project, and this Scratch project is basically like, what's your favorite song or musician? So if I say something like Madonna. I don't know why that didn't work.
That certainly did not.
So what it did is, there's a key part here where it goes out and there's a new block that says play music like. So it took what I typed in that case Michael Jackson, it then sent that to Spotify. Spotify sends back a music clip of a Michael Jackson song. And then it also sends back information about the beats in the song. So we have other Scratch blocks that says every beat. So if you notice, characters were dancing in sync. That wasn't just a coincidence. It's really taking the information from what we get from Spotify. For the kids, we tried to give them the higher level control over that. So you can say this should happen every beat, or this should happen every 4 beats. So these are the type of things we're experimenting with. We want to have other people who have either online services or physical devices that connect to the computer to be able to add their own scratch blocks. Like this is the collection of new blocks that will work with Spotify. This is when we're still trying to work out the legal side of this. Whether this one's going to launch, because dealing with music licenses is something that's a challenge. So we're working with Spotify, and we're not sure if we're going to get this one out there as part of the launch or not, but we really like it. But let me just end with a final story going back to kindergarten. And this is a story that was from a colleague of mine who had a daughter in kindergarten. Her daughter's name was Lily. And Lily came home from kindergarten one day and was telling her mom the story about a friend of Lily's. Her name was Daisy. And evidently Daisy had started kindergarten at a very early age and was spending a second year in kindergarten. And Lily had talked to Daisy about this, and Lily then said to her mom, she said, Daisy did kindergarten last year and is doing it again this year for 2 whole years. I want to do kindergarten again too. And when I heard this story, of course, part of me was happy because I could see that Lily was very happy in kindergarten. And in some way, Lily also sensed that kindergarten was a special time. So of course, as I also think kindergarten is a special time, I was happy that Lily was appreciating kindergarten. But also, when I read this, it makes me sad. Because in many ways, that I think Lily was also recognizing that she might never again have this type of opportunity for creative play and creative expression. And so I think in a lot of our work, what we're really trying to do is to make sure that young girls like Lily and Daisy and millions of other kids don't have to leave those type of creative opportunities behind when they leave kindergarten. They can continue to have those types of creative experiences as they continue to grow older. It's not an easy thing to do. There are a lot of things we're working against to make that happen. School systems are very slow to change. People have a mindset about how they imagine education. So shifting over to more kindergarten style is not something that's come easily. It's hard to change systems. It's hard to shift people's mindsets. But there's nothing more important for us to do. So that's why sort of in our work, we're dedicating ourselves to try to help spread this kindergarten approach. But it needs lots of people to support. So I hope all of you will sort of join in that effort so we can all join together to make sure that all kids grow up to be able to continue to have a kindergarten approach to grow up as full, to grow up and develop their creative capacities so they can be full and active contributors to tomorrow's society. Thanks a lot.
We have about 10 minutes for questions, if anybody has any questions.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, hi. So what you emphasize about the 4 Ps: project, passion, play, and peers. I think one of the barriers to why teachers cannot push for projects that emphasize 4 Ps is teachers need to teach for a test. Teachers' job performance is based on how students learn the test, how to take the test, and the results from standardized testing. So I know that I see a lot of students benefit from creative projects, but sometimes those projects may not help them, give them the tools or the resources to ace the standardized testing that is very high stakes. So what is your recommendation to teachers and educators who want to pursue the 4 Ps, but have to be mindful that they have to, there's a lot of pressures that they have to teach?
Yeah. Well, I think there's both sort of short-term and long-term. But ultimately, we need to change the system because teaching to the test is part of the obstacle that gets in the way. So ultimately, we have to change the system so it's not set up that way. Because the problem is, as long as you're doing things based, especially on quantifiable measures, that the tests are doing. The things that I see as most important for kids to be learning to develop as creative thinkers, to be good collaborators, creative problem solvers, are very difficult to measure in that type of test. So I think that does a real disservice to the educational system. So in the long term, we need to shift it. In the short term, I think there are ways in which to still do some of these activities. Like, as you might have heard, there's some schools and teachers who adopted the way that Google had a policy of giving some of their employees 20% time where they could work on their personal projects. Well, if Google felt that it was okay for their employees to work 20% on their own projects, why not kids? So take 1 day a week and do this, or 1 month a year. There are ways you can start to do it. And my hope is, I know there's some groups doing this, and it's also how people see the value of it, to then start to expand, because people saw the value of this. So when you try this, you can see that it really is leading to kids, developing these new capacities. So there's then a greater likelihood for people to recognize, to be able to do it and help spread from there. Yeah, in the back.
Okay. First, a tiny anecdote. In the 5th grade, my son was blessed with a teacher who was a fisherman, did not believe in homework. I've never bought so much duct tape in my life. He put everything together in different ways in my garage. And the sad part was to see the next year when he got a more traditional teacher and the duct tape got put away. And things didn't get created anymore. And it was really sad to see. But I understand the tension. So how do you resolve the conflict in our extremely fact-intensive, information-intensive world that we need to live in to get that information and fit the creative part into it as well?
Well, again, these two things don't have to be in opposition. I do think the project-based approach is going to prepare kids to be able to find the information that's important to them. So it's not that it's in opposition to that. I do think it's going to prepare kids in the long run to be able to do the right job to it. Again, it's difficult. I was visited a while ago. I read in the book about a visit going to a school in San Francisco called Brightworks, which is a maker school. It sounds like similar to what your son had.
He developed it himself.
Right. But I went there with I was going with some people from a large educational publisher, and I loved what I saw in the school. And as we left the school, I was ready to rave about it. And what they said is, well, but don't kids need to learn the basics first before they work on these creative projects? And in my mind, that's the wrong way of thinking about it. It's not, and that's usually the way school thinks, that first you have to learn the basics, then you apply them. And I think it's wrong. You can learn things through the projects. It's not before, but rather through.
The experiential learning model, like Northeastern goes through.
And then use,
Got it.
Understand through using.
Yeah,
is what
got
I
it.
think is the way of doing it.
Thanks.
But again, developing that understanding is important. There are core things that we want children to learn, but it's more a matter of how to help them learn it.
Got it, thanks.
So I'm interested in the lifelong learning aspect of this. Obviously the children are first, everybody's first concern, but to me the second is the teachers, okay? So do you have any to say about the people who are applying this to environments where we can educate teachers? One of my former graduate students, Karen Brennan, is now a professor at Harvard Ed School. And she's doing wonderful work with educators. And it's both work where to help educators learn how to support this type of learning, but also the type of work she does with educators is for educators to work on projects based on passions and collaboration, they're trying to live out the 4 Ps in order to support kids who learn the 4 Ps. So I think there are people out there who are doing this, and I think it's really important to make sure that educators experience it themselves. So it's not just supporting others doing it, but I agree that educators need to experience it themselves to see what it's like to go through this process. But again, it can, in this type of kindergarten-based approach, teachers are just as important as ever, but they play a somewhat different role. And for teachers to adapt, to learn to play a different role. And it can, at first, for some teachers who are accustomed to doing things in a certain way, it can be uncomfortable, where you have different kids work on different projects, and you don't know where they're, what's going to be happening. A lot of teachers can feel more comfortable where they know, well, they're giving this problem, here's the solution, they can see how well students have progressed towards this particular solution, can have greater comfort, but it's not allowing kids to develop creatively. So I think teachers need to develop, different ways of seeing their roles.
I want to understand your opinion on homeschooling as a methodology to explore.
Well, obviously there's many different homeschooling approaches. I do think we see a lot of homeschoolers who are very well aligned with the type of things that we're encouraging. There are a lot of homeschooling parents who brought their kids to do homeschool because they want kids to be able to follow their interests, and sometimes because their children haven't been successful in school because they've been bored by school or constrained by school. So there are a lot of homeschooling parents or homeschooling communities, collections of people, homeschooling groups of kids, who I think are very well aligned with this 4P approach. Of course, other homeschoolers are not. So, but I think we have a lot to learn from from the activities of homeschoolers, because I think there are big parts of the homeschooling community that are very much looking at the same type of sort of free choice approach to education, empowering kids to follow their own interests and to do things. So we've always learned a lot by looking at the homeschooling community. I mean, for me, the only real challenge with homeschooling is it's not something that's available to everybody. So there's a risk of it being for a privileged few is a challenge. And I know that for me, my grandparents came to this country as immigrants, not speaking any of the language. So my parents went to school. They learned English in school, in public school. So I have a great reverence for public schools because it enabled our family to go. So my grandparents could not have homeschooled my parents. And so I'm so grateful that they were able to go to school that enabled them to move forward and to then support me in the things that I do. So that's sort of the one challenge I see. But I think we have a lot to learn from. I think there's great things happening in homeschooling communities.
Do we have time for 2 more questions?
Yeah, over there.
Yeah, using building blocks as a great for your presentation. What do you think that, so all the development of these smart toys that sort of, spoon feed ideas to kids, what kind of effect would that have on the development of kids' imagination? You don't need to imagine that a plane can fly when it actually can't fly, right?
But I do think part of the problem is that cartoon I showed at the beginning of the teacher pouring information into the kids' heads, a lot of times with new technology, we've just stuck with that same image, but now technology is pouring information into the kids' heads. So I think that it's problematic. I'm not sure it's anything totally new, but it's sort of perpetuating some of the old approaches to education and learning, where it's not allowing kids to develop creatively. So everything from either the technology they're just sort of feeding instruction to the kids, or things they're sort of having kids follow step by step without being able to do things imaginatively. But it's a challenge. It's not just in technology. So part of the challenge is to make sure that we have more sort of building block technologies that allow kids to create things. But then also environments and teachers that support that. Because with Scratch, we do see some places that even though we design Scratch, these type of creative explorations, some people use Scratch in a very restricted way. Like one story I tell, so I woke up one morning and I saw on the Scratch website, there were 30 identical projects. And I thought maybe there was a bug. But in fact, they were all done by different kids. And then I realized it was from a classroom where the teacher had said, do this, do this, do this, and now share your project. So they all the identical project and share it on the website. And of course, that's not how we imagine people should use Scratch, but people do. Yeah.
What kind of research have you done about using Scratch with kids who have learning disabilities?
Yeah. There's a lot of people doing it out there. But we have Scratch conferences at MIT every other summer. In fact, this summer, 2018, and end of July, we're having another Scratch conference. It's largely for educators. And there's always a lot of interest in presentations, especially with kids on the autism spectrum. There's been a lot of interest in Scratch there because a lot of those kids have done really engaged things with Scratch. So there's a wonderful project, I don't know if I'll show it now, of a kid on the Scratch website did this project that's called UBU. And it's about following your own passion. It's about an autistic kid, and he talks about all his different challenges, but why he fell in love with Scratch and the way he's using it. There are other things, so I think there's been a lot of interest in that. Right now, we haven't done a very good job of people on the accessibility side. So Scratch isn't so open for people with visual impairments and other challenges. We have a graduate student right now who's trying to work as we work on Scratch 3.0 to improve the accessibility of Scratch. But it's an area where we need to do a lot more work.
Okay.
Okay. Let me just end by saying, if you want to learn more, there is my book, Lifelong Kindergarten, which is out. And we also have this online course called Learning Creative Learning. We offered last fall, and we're planning to offer it again sometime this spring. So, but also all the content is still up there. So there's not a cohort going through the course now. But if you go there, we have videos and other things about these ideas. Well, if you just search for Learning Creative Learning, you'll find it. Okay, thanks a lot.